Good evening, everybody. Another Monday night with bees all day. And it started out as a nice, cool morning today and ended up being a pretty nice day. So, got a few people in here. I see Joey's back, Jonathan, Randy. How are you tonight? We got Parrot Farms in here. Mike from Vermont's in here. Clay's in here. Jeremy's in here. And that's about it right now. It's still a little early. We got a few coming in. There's more coming in all the time. Hey, Dodd, good to see you. There's Joe. Good to see everybody tonight. So, this weekend was a really nice weekend. There's Sarah. It was a really nice weekend this weekend. We had temperatures on Saturday in the mid 80s. And Sunday, we had temperatures on the mid 80s. So we had a really good weekend. I moved some hives this weekend and got them set up at the store. Those are going to be my two teaching hives over there this year. And was looking at them, and I think they exploded overnight. 8 inches of snow, Jonathan. Wow. We had a little bit of rain overnight last night, but it wasn't much. It was enough, though. Yeah, we'll take every little bit we can get. Well, there's Dave. Bit we can get. How are you, Dave?
How's it going?
There's Dave.
Uh-oh.
Pretty good. Good to see you in here.
Yeah.
So you had a good weekend?
Sure did. I got in. I checked every hive yesterday.
That's good. They all looking good?
7 of the 9. One.
Okay.
I got a question. One.
Okay.
If a queen goes drone laying, do all her bees, all the workers, do they start drawing drone-sized cells out for everything?
They can.
Because I got one hive, my nasty hive, the one I was going to requeen, so it kind of makes it a little bit easier. I think 6 to 8 frames were majority drone brood, and it was drawn out over top of old comb. So it's like they expanded it out.
Yeah, I've seen them do that before.
And it is a ton. I have never seen so much drone brood on frames before.
Yeah, but see, in your operation, if you're queen rearing, that's not a bad thing having a queen go drone laying.
I don't want her though. Her line of bees are very nasty, and they're headhunters. They bump the veil, and they will follow you all the way to the house.
Yeah, time to get rid of her then.
Yeah, so I'm glad she went drone laying. It makes it easier to knock her out.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, you don't want her drones either, then.
Yeah,
no, you don't.
So they weren't capped. They were all like larva stage, but they're all huge cells. And the other hive that I have an issue with, I think the queen, they either killed her, and I know they didn't swarm because there's no brood in there. It's splotchy brood, like a bad brood pattern, and there's no eggs, no fresh eggs, but there is like 25 queen cells.
Oh yeah,
all drawn out and charged.
They're ripe and ready for a queen.
Yeah, so I didn't see her in there. I looked. There's no eggs, like no sign of her in there at all.
Yeah.
And other than like, I stopped counting at like 20 queen cells that were all charged. So wow. I'm thinking of trying to take those 2 hives, the ones that I got that are bad, and split them up into a whole bunch of splits.
You can, yeah. I was going to say, if you got 20 queen cells in that one hive, if you let all those queens hatch out in that hive, you're going to lose that hive altogether. So, because you'll have follow-on swarm after follow-on swarm. So, take a frame of it and put in that other hive that's got the drone laying queen and see what they do.
Yeah. I was thinking of letting them finish them out because they haven't capped them over. So I think I got like, what, a week and a half, maybe a little more than a week. So I was thinking sometime.
All that drone brood is chicken feed.
Yeah. So like that's what I'm going to pull them out once they get capped over and just mash them out and just kill them. But then those queen cells, I'm going to try and harvest whatever I can before they get capped or after they get capped and try and make a bunch of splits out of them.
Yep. That's a good idea. That's a real good idea.
I didn't know if it was too early or not. I've seen some drones. Like it's not like there's a lot. There's probably about like what I saw about 20 or 30 drones in a few of the hives.
Yeah.
So that and the mite situation didn't look too bad. I don't know if y'all's hives got a lot of burr comb in them, but every one of mine, it was like 8 or 9 frames. The top frames were connected to the bottom frames.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of burr comb yet here. We were in hives over the weekend and fed combination patties one last time, and then we'll go to as they need it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll keep dropping the bee bites on them for the probiotic side of it.
Right. Yeah, when I pulled the box up and it opened up all those drone brood of that burr comb, I didn't see a single mite. And I went every hive I did it, I dug through. There may be mites in there, but I didn't see a single one in any of that burr comb. So I'm hoping the mite levels are low right now.
Yeah, we had some drone brood, and we harvested, I think, 25 cells, and just opened them up and looking for brood, and we found one mite. Looking for mites on the drone brood, we found one. So, time to treat.
Yeah, I gave them an OAV treatment yesterday because I got a new hive set up, so now I can kind of lock the doors and all the OAV stays in the box.
Well, that's a good thing.
I used to have the apiary bottoms, and it they got a bunch of holes everywhere. It likes to bleed.
Oh yeah.
So now I switched over to just regular bottom boards, and I put a gate on the front of it that you can open and close.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you're doing the right things, Dave. It really does. I don't think I'd change much of what you're doing.
Right.
Yet. Let's see what your queen rearing does.
Yeah, I'm gonna see, since I got all those 20 or 20 cells. It's like 25. I really did stop counting at like 20, and I just put them all back in there, and then I'm gonna try and cut them all out and see what happens. But if I get too many there, that may postpone me doing my actual grafting, because that's 20 something cells there that I got to deal with.
Yeah, you could just take some of those cells and just put them in mating nukes and let them hatch out in a mating nuke.
Yeah. Yep. That's I got 11 5-frame nukes that I found off a beekeeper that was over in Virginia, and then I got the 40 mini mating nukes that I can get primed and ready.
Yep. And it only takes one cup of bees to populate those mini mating nukes.
Yeah.
That's easy to get.
Has anybody put supers on yet?
Oh yeah, I got supers on.
I did that yesterday too.
Yep. Yeah, we've got, but some of our hives have 2 supers on already.
2. So, oh geez.
Yeah.
Well, you got all drawn comb and stuff, right?
Yep, yeah. I do.
I don't have any drawn comb for mediums. So I just went ahead and put one on there, and hopefully they'll go up there and start messing with it.
Yeah. Yeah, we keep a lot of drawn comb. I'm going to be rotating that brood comb this year. So
Well, putting a
that's,
new foundation in and taking the old stuff out and get rid of it.
yeah, I'm going to scrape it off right there in the bee yard.
You just put it back in, scrape it off, put it back in.
Scrape it off and put it right back in the hive. Plastic foundation.
May have to try that.
You don't bother re-waxing?
Huh?
You don't bother re-waxing?
Nope. Don't bother re-waxing. Because once they build that comb and you scrape it, it pushes some of that wax down on there anyway. It pushes it down on it, and you can feel the wax on it when you do that. So
I did a few old ones like that, a couple dozen this year. Is going to see what they did with it.
Yeah.
I took a chunk of beeswax that I had melted. I re-wax. I've been busy the past 3 weeks. I've built like 50 boxes, all the frames for them. I've re-waxed all the plastic foundations that I had laying around, and with a foam roller. And when I got done that, I was like, all right, I made a block of beeswax. And I don't know if y'all have done it, but like you take it and you rub it in the spots that are around the drawn frame or drawn comb already,
Right.
like parts that they didn't get to. Will they draw that out if you rub wax, like dry wax down on them?
That's
It
what I've
depends.
heard. That's what I've heard.
Yeah. I keep a block in my toolbox.
Yeah. I mean, you can do that. And sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. Some of my bees won't touch it if you do that because it's not their wax.
Yeah, so it was beeswax, but like I've seen people do it, but I've never seen anybody say, "Hey, look, this is what happened after I did it a couple weeks later."
Right.
They just scraped it on there, and that was the last
Hey,
time
Brian.
you ever did it.
Yeah. DC says he carries some wax in his pocket. I wouldn't forget it and leave it in there, DC. You might have a then you'll be rubbing your pocket on your frames instead of the wax.
Now, I know it works better if you lay that frame or that foundation down in the sun for just a couple of minutes, not long,
Yep.
where it'll warp, and get it kind of warm, and it'll kind of make that wax lay down on there better.
Yeah.
Instead of just crumbling off, it kind of sticks better.
Yep. And if you
I
take
bet-
that bar of wax and set it in the sun for a couple minutes too, it goes on a little bit easier. Instead of melting it all the way down. So
I
how's
hadn't
your
put any-
weekend, Charlie?
Not supers. I hadn't put any supers on yet. I've just been splitting everything back real hard.
Yep. How was your weekend, Charlie?
Pretty good. It
That's good.
Saturday was warm and
Yeah.
went through all the hives and pulled brood frames up, look at them, and I don't know. I put some bee bites on pretty much every hive, either a half a pound or a pound, depending on how big the hives were.
Yeah.
And found a couple remnants of pollen patties where a couple hives, you could see where the hive beetles had laid in there. So I smashed that and threw that out on the ground. And they all got sugar water on them. That's kind of coming to an end. I don't really need to put too much more of that on. And found one hive that was queenless. It was a 24 queen, which wasn't surprising. And I had remember that queen I had? It was late, and it made a queen, that one hive that made a queen. I put all them bees in there. Well, I went out there the one day, it was last week or whatever it was. I thought for sure it was, it was spotty brood and queen. I thought it was queenless. So I condensed it down to 2 mediums, and then I went through it methodically, and don't know if I didn't find her in there, but she's probably really poorly mated because of when she got mated. So
Is
I
she
got
laying?
huh?
Is she laying?
Yeah, somewhat. For me, then it's better to just pinch her and get a new one. But what I did was I was reading my Doolittle book here about queen ring, and I went over here to a nuke that was a pretty good nuke. I found the queen. I made up a 5-frame nuke basically out of that hive, that nuke box with the queen. Took it down there. When it was like an afterthought. It finally hit me what to do. And I found the other queen on a frame. I picked her up, walked her back, and I just put her in that hive that I just taken that queen and all her brood out. And I dropped that whole nuke into that hive. And should be fine, I think. That's what Doolittle says anyway. We'll see. There's not that, I mean, there's bees in there, but not a tremendous amount of bees. And she's got her own bees for their own brood and her in there laying. So I think it'll work out fine.
Yeah.
I'm curious of what the other hive does to that old queen. That science girl that we had in the club, she had on her presentation where they switched queens from one hive to the next. The one queen was crappy and they had a good queen and they switched it around and the crappy queen became good. And then, but she couldn't tell me why. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I figured it this way. If she continues on it, the junkie queen continues on, it'll keep that nuke from going laying worker until I get queens to replace her.
Okay.
To make, so we'll see. Then I got another one there that's queenless, and I don't know. I was working on that kind of stuff yesterday, and I just got really tired, and I went up to the music show, which I just should have just stayed home. Hey, Ian.
Hey, Ian, good to see you tonight.
Anyway, I'm gonna just I got another nuke out there. I'm just gonna take the whole darn nuke out of there and just drop it in that other production hive.
Yeah, that works.
The production hive's gonna do better for me than the nuke,
Yeah. And it's always good to have a high, the smaller nukes laying around. Well, not laying around, but being around.
Well, that's why I have
them. If you need a support hive, you got it.
That's why I have them.
Yeah.
So
everybody saw the topic that I'd like to discuss tonight.
I didn't. What is it?
How to maintain your health and well-being while keeping bees and ways to mitigate your stress.
Sell all your bees and just go find a different hobby. Right?
So
that's the quickest.
I have a lot of friends that have some pretty big apiaries, and talk to them on a regular basis. And I'm always hearing, well, I worked 200 hives today, or I worked 150 hives today, or I worked 70 hives today. And this is the only job they have, right? Yeah. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, the last time I talked to this person, they said they had 273 hives, right? Why are they killing themselves working 200 hives in one day? All they're doing is stressing themselves out to try to get through all these hives in one day. Why not make it
one man? Easy? I'm sorry. When one man looks in 200 hives, he ain't working.
No, he's not.
Sorry, Ian. You're faster than the rest of us.
Yeah, you are. But why not?
He knows what
break
he's looking
that
for.
Up, and let's say you have 200 hives. There's 7 days in a week. You could do 50 hives every other day, and get the 200 hives done in a week. And there's your inspections.
But also if you got the weather.
That's right. If you have the weather, there's no need to try to do all 200 in one day because you're going to miss something. And And what does that cause? It causes stress on the beekeeper, right? This time of year, you're worried about swarms. Swarm season's coming. You're getting your bees going. That's a lot of stress. So how do you all get rid of your stress, Charlie?
I don't know. I mean, I don't really worry about swarms because I use the Demery, which I don't have swarms. But
Yeah.
just I work. I'll stress over the fact that I'm trying to achieve, I want all my hives to be the same. So this year they look a lot better than they did last year. And it's proving out that, I need to requeen everything every year. And then I think for me in the past 4 years, I had close to 50 hives. And it was at least 40 some. And I was selling nukes, dealing with people. The big thing about nukes is you're kind of counting your chickens before they hatch. You're saying, okay, I'm going to promise 20 nukes out to certain, you got 20 nukes sold. And, if you got a couple hundred hives, no problem. But so you sit there and stress over that. And I guess it was last year, year before, I guess 2 years ago, I decided that goat yoga. I don't know what the goat yoga is, but I said, I'm going to get out of the nuke business. I don't have to worry about having hives for somebody else. And I got to looking down one day after around July and looking down to the road. I said, all them hives down through there are production hives. And I had gotten my honey off. And I'm like, honey to me is like working, like baling hay. You got a 4-day window and you got to kick butt in those 4 days in order to get that hay in the barn. And after that, you can back off. You don't have the push. And it's like honey. You got so many, a week or two to get that off if you want to get it done in a timely fashion. And after that, you're done for the season, except for treating and things like that. And what you get in honey, you got in honey, and you're not promising anybody any amount of honey. This is what I got in the buckets. And, there's the money and here's the honey and see you later. I don't have to tell you how to drink your honey. Whereas selling nukes, it's like, okay, when you're going to show up, the public wants to be on their time schedule instead of them being on mine. And then making sure you got bees to sell them. And then it irritates you that they're going to, before they even leave the property, they're destined to become dead bees because of the lack of education and the lack of, what would you call it, caring by the new beekeeper. Put bees in a box and walk away attitude. And I didn't like that after caring for my bees like I do. So I quit all that stuff. And I said, I'm going to worry about me. So I used my nukes this year. I carry 8 nukes for backup. I expanded my honey production hives. And I do, and then I got back into queen rearing, which is for me, it's a fun thing. It's a competitive, you're competing against yourself with the bees. And I like that. It's for me, I like to learn stuff, and it's like, there's a lot more detailed things to learn about queens and getting them mated and then getting them, accepted by the hive you're trying to get them into. And there's lots of ways of doing that. And I just got this, like I say, the book from where Doolittle wrote the book 100 years ago. And there's a lot of things in there that He's talked about just what I said. I took a queen out of a hive and put another queen with their brood in the hive. We're talking 2 minutes. We ain't gonna have to worry about an introduction cage and all this other stuff. And I realized what the premise is. It's about pheromones, and it's not just the queen pheromones. It's also her brood pheromones and the pheromones of her bees on them frames. And it's like, that's a non-stressor. Next, come June of this year, if I got 18 to 20 nukes, or let's say 18 nukes over here, their queens are destined for my honey production hives. All I got to do is find the queen, pull her out on a frame, put her off in a nuke box for temporarily, take 3 or 4 frames of the new queen and just put it in a hive. Yep. And I'm done. That's all the introduction I got to do. And Doolittle wrote in his book, he said he did 60 queens like that. I think he had 1 failure.
Yeah.
And and that's where I get all my soapbox. And I'm like, why isn't there somebody maybe I need to do this. Now, why isn't there a class that I couldn't have taken 5 years ago or whatever? And we talk about all these different things, how to introduce a queen versus the common thing of a queen cage. Now, he also states in his book, you put it in a cage, you got to go through all the steps like we do it right today, because her pheromones and everything shut down, and her eggs and stuff like that. So I like these bits of information that I've been finding out.
It seems like the queen's pheromones would build faster if you let her loose. As opposed to her. It seems like her pheromones would build a lot faster if you. I mean, yeah, you're plugging a couple of her frames in, but she's also walking around, so her pheromones should spread faster.
Well, there's another part of that right there. You watch Bob Benny's latest video, and he also, that video that he talked about queens over in Europe. He also had a similar video about 2 years ago. And he showed right there the science or whatever it was. If you have a brand new queen, let's say you're like a Georgia queen, within 14 days, she's getting caged. If they wait 21 days up to 24 days, the percentage of acceptance is like 30% higher. It's like in the 80 to 90% range, because if she, like even Doolittle stated in his book, she runs all over the place, like a young virgin, and the other bees will chase after her and they won't accept her very well. But now when she's 3 weeks old after she's been laying, she's in her groove, she's mature, she's confident and all that, and she has a higher acceptability. And that's what it is you got brood pheromone, you got her pheromone, and I presume her bees have a certain amount of pheromone too, because they smell different than maybe the other bees that are in that hive. And then you think about it, if that queen in there was failing, that means her pheromones are diminishing too at the same time. So when you put in a huge cloud of fresh pheromone in there between the brood, the bees, and her, I'll say changes the direction of that hive. Everybody says, oh, okay, we got somebody fresh here. Let's all get behind her and go with it. I mean, that's my philosophy, I guess you would call it. So that's something I'm looking forward to as far as mining out that type of information.
So, Ian, why don't you pop in here and tell us what you do to get rid of your stress and how you handle the spring stress?
He gets to travel all over the country and talk bees.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Joey, what do you do?
Well, I was going to ask Charlie to repeat all that, but I'll go ahead.
That was a very long-winded answer.
Well, it's like this weekend. I'm going to go up to Chester County, PA, they're having a 1-day conference. I used to go to it all the time until COVID came along and killed it. Is it going to be all that great? Not, probably not.
Anyway, I've already learned not to stress over any of it. If I can't do anything about it, I'm not going to try to do anything about it.
My big stressor is I want to be able to make 12 or 12 to 1,500 pounds of honey. I kind of stress over that part of it now. Do I have bee populations? As my bees up to par right now is what I can see of them to make me a good crop of honey. And that was not last year. The year before that, when I had brand new queens, I made more honey than I've ever thought about. And it was like Sutton that comes in here. He said, "Oh yeah, young queens make more honey because they're fresh, and they're laying the most amount of eggs they possibly can. They have the most." I just watched a video from Man Lake, some PhD, talking about as a year old later, she uses 3 to 5 sperms per egg. Year later, she's like down to only 1 million sperm in her inside of her, and her sperm is aged to the point where the sperm is in a circle motion and it spins. And as they get older, they have like long threads or long lines, and it's not as effective. And it's like I don't know. People talk about queens used to last longer, and I guess they did. And they talk about pesticides and whatever else affect the queens. But it looks like to me that they just don't, the queens are not like what they used to be as far as actual genetics of themselves. Besides the environments of the environment against them. It's like talk about where I live. They used to get 100 pounds of honey. The environment has totally changed. You can't get 100 pounds of honey anymore. There's nothing out there for them to get. So,
What do you do, Dave?
Oh, I stress every day. There is no stress.
How do you get rid of it? How do you get rid of your stress?
I won't say I stress every day. That was kind of a joke, but it's like this is like, come next month will be my first full year as a beekeeper, and it's like this year I think it's more therapeutic, learning more things and doing more things for me.
That's what I'm getting at about going with the queens. I feel like I've hit the top of the hill and everything else. I've learned as much as I can, that I've learned everything in the beekeeping as far as that goes, as far as the normal stuff. And now queen is a new hill to climb.
Yeah. It's like this year I want to, since I got 7 hives now, the 2 that I got to split up, and I got 7 hives, it's like, what do I do with those? I'm thinking of like experimenting with ways to either make them not swarm or, like here's what I was thinking. I was going to take like 3 or 4 frames out of each one of the 7 production hives that I got and make splits off of them with the other 2 bad hives that I got. Like take 3 or 4 frames out of all the good hives, split them up with the 2 hives that I want to split up with all those queen cells, and see how they're working. And then those 7 hives, once they rebuild back up and draw more frames out, demery them to have them ready for the flow when it hits. So I know it's right around the corner, but it's kind of doing like a little bit of a split to keep them from swarming, but then demery them to make them big populations. I don't know if that's too much to do on one hive, but I figured I'd just experiment with it and just do one demery, because like the age of the bees should be, by the time that wave of bees dies off, we should be at the end of the flow, I'm assuming.
That math doesn't work.
Really?
No. It
It doesn't work.
All right. Glad you talked to tell me something.
I've heard that same mathematical problem. By the time it does this and does this and blah, 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 blah. Bullshit.
Yep. That
Well,
math
well-
doesn't add up.
Now, go back to the stress thing of what I have done. I was like around 40 some hives. Then I went down to 37. And then when I got rid of my nukes, as far as the amount of ones I'm selling, because I had started up like 24 nukes. And now I'm down to 8 nukes and 18 hives. Now I'm down to 20. Now I'll have a total of 26 going into the winter, hopefully. So
Right,
I don't
so
have
it's-
to. I don't have to manage so much. That's one thing.
Yeah, well,
Now,
you said you do
How'd
the.
you get them down that far, Charlie?
Huh?
How'd you get them down that far? I'm in the 40s. Right now, I'm probably in the 80s counting the nukes. And I've been trying to get back to 25 for like 7 years.
Time to start
Combine
selling beehives.
Instead of, well, I started out with 10 production hives, 24 nukes. I was going to be in a nuke business.
Well,
And then I had a few other
that's what
hives
I
at
do.
another place I was managing. And then it got to the point where I'm like, I need more honey because honey sales keep boosting up. So my racks there would hold 4 nukes. So I would sell them nukes off and not replenish them. And then I would take that rack and it would hold 2 10 framers. So I'm reducing by 2 every time. And then I had some dead outs here a couple years ago, I guess it was quite a few. And I bought some nukes and because I had promised my nukes for other people. I kept my promise to my sales. It was basically a wash that year as far as profit goes. I bought a bunch of nukes in, and then what I did was I should have got to thinking about it. I was going to go from 12 to 14. Or 14, let's see, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I was going to go up to 16. I did that year. And then I got to thinking about it. I don't need 12 nukes. I said, I'm going to go from 16 to 18 production hives and go down to 8 nukes. And he's out and about.
Hey, Ian,
Oh,
how are
Mark.
you tonight?
Hey guys, how are you today?
Still daylight
Good.
where he's at.
So what do you do to get rid of all the farming and bee stress every year?
Well, that's a very good question. But I'll tell you, I guess that question will be answered by each individual differently. But I'll tell you one thing I learned the hard way, and I see this with everybody, regardless what kind of business they're running. And it makes or breaks the business, makes or breaks the ability for that manager to succeed year after year after year after year while working business and then trying to carve out time for family and just personal time, just our own, our worth, whatever, like what we were here to do, is actually to enjoy life sometimes. But I find when I was younger building the business, and I'm still doing it now, through the busy season, this farm's bad because we're busy all the time, but we have busy seasons and we're working 14, 15-hour days. We're putting the time in, we're getting it done, which is fine. And that's stressful on its own. And that's how each individual person needs to be able to manage that type of workload. But I found the hardest part was at the end of the busy season when you're working 15-hour days every day, push, never stop, trying to get ahead, always going. And finally, the work ends. That next week, right after that point, is a real hard time for me. I learned the hard way. And for a lot of people, it's like almost like, when you're working a tractor really hard in the field and you're pulling hard and it's just working all day. And if you turn that engine off, so pow, just like that engine will blow up. And people do the same thing. You're working hard and all of a sudden you stop and you think that stop is like relief, but it's not. You got to be able to manage that. You got to manage yourself during that time of heavy work to the time of less work, right? You got to ease yourself. You got to manage yourself down. You got to, you got to run that engine down and allow yourself to idle down to the point where you're only working 8 hours a day, or maybe you're going to take a week off or something like that. And I sent myself to the hospital 2 years in a row until I realized what the hell is going on, right? It's because I wasn't managing this dynamic of workload and stress, and just, not being able to run myself down. And I see that with guys all the time. I see them in business. They're working hard, then right after the busy season, something bad will happen. It'll be within their family or within their business relationship with their partners or something. Is this the guys, they don't know what to do with themselves, and then they blow up, they blow up and they start, blowing everything up around them. It's a bad thing. And then before they realize what's actually going on, and how to manage that, it's too late. Marriage done, or the business is falling apart because of issues. So that is very important, is managing yourself between stages of work. In our farm, like, we have the busy in the summer. I'm so busy with the honey harvest, and then I go on the grain harvest, and then we go on the fall work, and then just at that time I gotta idle myself down. Then we get back up into the cattle work. I'm not as involved in there as much anymore, but then it's so busy through the calving season, and we're going, and then just gradually down, and we're back into the spring like that. So it's kind of up and down, but you got to manage your time through those points. And anyway, that's just what I wanted to say to you, Bill.
Yeah, I appreciate the input, Ian. I really do, and it's a great insight into how to get rid of the stress, how to manage the stress.
But going
Yeah.
over, like, I mean, Ian, you just came back from Europe and all, and having a nice, I'll
Nice
say,
vacation.
vacation of some.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that having breaks like that ever so often, for me, I know for me, it's like going to Nobby. It's like I'd work all summer long, and I get real short with the customers, I'll say.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I'm out of here for a week to go to Nobby and see everybody and not think about the mill or anything else. And that really helps me out.
Yeah, in
And
the summer, I have a week I go fishing. I look forward to it. I work hard, and that's kind of my goal. That's one thing to do too, just kind of plan vacations. But I don't truly wind down during that week. I'm still here, even though I'm gone. I'm gone fishing. I'm still here.
Yeah.
If I were to plan that trip to England right after, I put the bees away, it would be a wasted trip, because I'm still here. I'm not winding myself down. Going to England there with my wife, after I've got myself down into winter, I'm not working so hard, I can relax a little bit, then get away, then I can really enjoy myself getting away.
Yep.
It's all about managing yourself, understanding yourself, and how you manage your stress and manage your work, and then all
Right.
the dynamics around work and family. There's no such thing as a balance. Like, that's bullshit. Anybody can tell you that. A business owner always puts priority on the work every time, all the time, because business could give a damn about your family.
That's
But
where you
as an owner, you got to realize at times that you don't have to work as hard, and you can get away from the farm or the business, and you can then spend time with your family and spend time on yourself or whatever. So it's just one of those things. Yeah. So anyway,
Yeah.
I got to get back to work. Speaking of work,
Thank you,
I
Ian.
just thought I'd hop
appreciate
in
you
there.
coming in.
Yeah,
all right, thank you.
I guess.
That's the first time he's actually said bye, guys.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a pretty good insight into that, right?
Yeah. His kind of work, it don't stop. It never stops, even if he's gone. That kind
Yeah,
of business.
exactly.
I'm, as far as beekeeping and what we're talking about here, my simple answer is I'm keeping it a hobby. This is my hobby. I try to make it break even or make a little extra money, but I always put it right back in it.
Yep.
And when the
You know-
fun's gone, I won't have bees anymore.
I learned a long time ago from my grandfather, coming up through learning to beekeep and everything. And he always said, pick two things out of beekeeping and be good at them. And one of them is keeping bees. So you get to pick one other thing that you want to do. But if whatever one you pick, whether it be honey, queen rearing, nukes, pollination, whatever you pick, be good at it. And if you're good at those two things and you enjoy it, well, if it's honey, you get a break in here after the honey flow, and you get the chance to, like Ian said, to come down after the dearth. And now you're in your fall mode and it's not as much work. So you can relax some.
I mean, for me, after July, and I get the honey put in buckets. I mean, then it's like, okay, you give them a little feed and you start doing your treatments. And that's not every day. It's just once a week.
Yeah.
That's what I got to looking. I got to looking at one day. Here I'm working on these nukes. And I'm looking down this line right behind me there. I'm like, you know what? I don't have to touch those hives for 2 weeks. I said, they are actually less work than these nukes are. And that's why I switched around. And then queen rearing is only a 3-month thing during the summertime.
Yeah.
And you might expand to, with counting your mating boxes, you might go up to 50 some hives or close to 60, but it's only for 3 months. And those mating boxes, once you put that cell in, don't go back for 2 weeks. So there's not a lot of touching those hives that much.
Exactly.
There's a lot of them, but you're not touching them.
So like Ian was saying, he's a farmer as well. He's got a big farm operation going on. I'm a farmer. I don't have a big farm operation going on, but I have a retail store that I have to run. I have to keep up with that. I have the bees. Granted, I have my wife. She does help, and she's a great help at it. And I do have help in the store. One of them's on here tonight. Her name is Judith. If you see her in there, say hi and tell her I said thank you. And then I have the farm. We're getting ready to come into planting season. So imagine my stress level here now. I'm busy at the store. It's swarm season. And it's time to plant. I know what I kind of feel what he goes through, you know. And then after we plant comes hay season. Charlie knows about that.
Yeah.
So I get rid of my stress. I go out and I take care of the varmints on the farm. That relieves my stress. So, there's a lot of different ways people relieve their stress. And I used to go fishing until it got too expensive to go.
So you took up a more expensive hobby here.
Yeah, so I picked up an even more expensive hobby, and but I enjoy the farm work. I enjoy working with the bees, and I enjoy the store because I get to see so many people. And that's kind of how I deal with things. So,
well, like this year, it's been nice. Was one, we went to Nobby, and then we went to St. Louis, the EMBA.
Yeah.
And it was about a month or so apart there. And that was about each one of them was about 4 or 5 days off for me.
Charlie, that was a good stress relief for me and you, but Bill was working.
He was working. Why is that?
Yeah, I said me and
Oh, you mean at Nobby?
Nobby. That was a good stress relief for us. We were having fun, but Bill was working.
Yeah.
But and now I'm going to this other 1-day show. And after that, like Bill said, I mean, I've talked about my son today. He was looking about dropping fertilizer on the fields here in the next week if they can get in on them. And one thing about this year, it's going to be so much. It's going to be a total, complete makeover on the hay barn because we got that new machinery and there's none of this like, oh my gosh, we got 10 wagons on load. We don't have nothing on load. We just do everything with a piece of machinery. It makes it so much better. And so, you know, like I say, for me in the bee yard, stress wise, if I can get them hives up and running and they're really, you know, thriving, great big clusters and whatever, that's what makes me feel good when I see that. At least I feel like I'm on the right pathway to make a successful beehive out of all these ones. That's my goal with the bees.
When you said earlier, when you like a person doing 200 hives a day, I was thinking, yeah, I only got 9 technically, but if I can knock those all out in one day, that means I got 6 more days or 2 more weeks that I could do other things with, like build
Right.
boxes. Same thing with that. That's where when you said that, I was like, maybe it's the mentality you get it all done in one day, then you got 13 days to go do other things.
Yeah, but you got to look at it like this: 9 hives is one thing, 50 hives is one thing. But when you have 200 hives that you're going to do in a day, you're working hives as the sun's coming up in the morning,
Mhm.
and you don't quit working hives until the sun goes down in the evening. That's at least 12 hours.
It's a hell of a day. But I mean,
It
then you
is
got
a
13
long day.
days.
And
You
think
got
about
6
it
to
now.
13 days to recover from it.
And you're picking up these frames looking at bees all day, and you get down to the last 15 hives, and let's say there's something wrong in one of those last 15 hives, and you glaze over it. What good did it do you to check those other hives if you miss something that's it's vitally important in one of the last 15?
Well, that was always my big question: is all right? You have, let's say, 50 hives or 100 hives. It's like they'll say, well, you know, you do it. They don't look at their hives like I think the way we do things. At least I don't think they do.
Yeah, I've seen some commercial beekeepers out there where it's they just are the bees alive. They'll check a couple frames. If the queen's not doing good, they'll just pinch the queen, shake all the other bees off, and close the box up, and the bees will just go scatter up in other hives somewhere, and then they just keep it moving. It's not like they look at every single frame, like kind of what I do.
Or they don't look at every hive, you know, real super close.
Right.
No, they don't, but still, you can miss something.
Right.
So,
I
personal
don't
opinion,
know what anybody's doing.
I think you're
Looking
better
at
off
that
having
many
a
hives that
schedule.
quick.
I think you're better off having a schedule, and you do so many hives a day for the week, and then you get a week that you don't have to do anything in the hives. If you're checking every other week.
That's my intention. Like this year, I'm kind of doing.
Well,
a
that's
lot.
what I did. That's what I did every week. One week was nukes, and the next week was 10 framers.
That's what I want to get into. I'm thinking about trying to sell some nukes and all that, and then that I had that in my head too. But was do my main hives one week, and then the next hive or the next week would be all the nukes and the queen mating nukes and all that. And that way, it's just every other week I got something different.
What I've learned with selling the nukes, just to give you a little advice, when you start that, you tell those customers this is the day they're going to be for sale.
Mhm.
This is the day you need to show up.
Mm-hmm.
And you might get half of them to show up that day. And then you give them another day for the rest of them. And after that, you just go on to the next people on the list. I've had them call me 3 or 4 times and text and just checking. I'd say around the 15th April. Text me again a couple days later or a week later, around the 15th April. When I call them, they're on a 2-week vacation somewhere.
Yeah, and they knew about it when you called them the first
You
time.
already knew that, yeah.
Yeah. Why didn't they tell you then? So going back to something that Charlie said earlier about stress and education. You get these new beekeepers out here and they're all gung-ho, or they just set them out and leave them. Let's just say they're a little gung-ho. and they start with 2 hives. Next thing you know, they got 4. The next thing you know, they got 6, 8, 16. They've grown so fast, they haven't taken the time to learn what's really going on in the hives. And that's a major point of stress. If you don't know what's going on and you start losing bees, don't you get stressed out, Dave? Joey, don't you get stressed out? If you were a new beekeeper and all of a sudden you started losing hives, that's a point of stress, right?
That used to bother me. Now I just dump
Now
it.
it doesn't bother you anymore, but
It used to.
I kind of think I've fast tracked that phase because last year I started with 4.
Yep.
I accidentally got 5. They tried to supersede the queen, and then I caught the virgin. I found her when she hatched, and then I split them there, and then I went to 11.
Yeah.
And then I went back to 10. One didn't take, and then I lost another one. I ended up merging it in, and then it's just now that I know how to make bees, as opposed to just if I lose my bees, I go buy them somewhere else. The stress of losing a hive really doesn't bother me as much.
Yeah, because you don't have that monetary investment in those bees.
Now I bought the equipment. Now I have more equipment. If I lose a hive, I have equipment to put another hive into.
You build another hive. But new beekeepers growing fast, that creates a lot of issues for them because they don't understand what's going on. Mm-hmm. Tom, I don't buy that comment for a minute.
I didn't know.
So, you have to, as your hives increase, you need to increase your knowledge. And the more you increase your knowledge, the less your stress is going to go down.
It's definitely stress. I'm kind of stressing right now. It's because it's my first swarm season, and I haven't learned not necessarily what date, but like what time frame that it's going to be happening. I know it's right on the doorstep, if not happening already. I see people in the Virginia Beekeepers Association saying they got swarms in Southern Virginia already, and I'm not too. I'm an hour, if 2 hours away from them.
Right. So you're 2 weeks out.
Yeah. So it's which is where I'm hoping that I'm thinking that one hive that lost their queen, and I got 20 some queen cells right now. I'm thinking that's a blessing right now for me that it happened, because that means next week I can make all the splits and kind of dial all my main production hives back a little bit.
Yeah. Joey, did I just see you throw a pair of glasses up behind you?
Yes, you did. I was trying to read with 125s.
Yeah.
And it wasn't working. I got me some with 1.50 or 1.5.
Yeah.
I can see with them. I've been trying to see this text over here the whole show.
Yeah. But I hope everybody's gotten a little something out of this. It's something that beekeepers don't talk about. And, the more you get together, the more you talk. Yeah, I'm a little stressed out.
It's definitely being a new beekeeper and watching everybody, like videos and all that kind of stuff, and just seeing how people do things. We don't get the full aspect of like I'm watching a beekeeper do it from start to finish, but you can definitely see that it is a very high intensity. Like it comes at a high intensity at times, and then it like drops down a little bit, and then it hits back up again, and then it drops down a little bit. It's also depending on the location of where you're at in the country too, because like northern beekeepers, you only have a short window of doing stuff with your bees, whether it's splitting, making honey, doing queens, and all that. Whereas southern beekeepers, you can kind of operate like nine months out of the year.
Where are you at, Dave?
Maryland.
About 2.5 hours south of me.
Sometimes us southern beekeepers will wear ourselves out just trying to keep them from swarming.
Yeah.
They keep building up so fast.
Right.
Well, the biggest
So-
thing I've learned through the demery, Dave, is that, you know, over the years, oh, give them more space, give them more space. And now my question to people who make that statement, I says, what kind of space are you talking about? And everybody thinks I'm just going to add another box. That doesn't keep them from swarming.
No,
That's
it doesn't.
not
If
the that's not the reason why they're swarming. The reason is because I learned through the demery method is that if the queen has a place to lay eggs, she won't swarm. As soon as she gets her box brood chamber filled up with eggs and she doesn't have a place to swarm, everybody says, hey, we need to go and leave and find a bigger house. So I keep pulling that cat brood out, putting it up on top of the hive, letting it hatch out. And they'll make queen cells up there too for you if you need more queens. A demery is a multifaceted production hive. It produces more honey. It produces more bees. It can, and when you put brood, you can put uncapped brood upstairs, or if you put cat brood and you miss a spot, they're going to make queen cells up there for you because they're too far away from the brood, from her pheromones in the bottom of that hive.
Yep.
Yeah, that's my thing. I was going to try and pull some frames out to make a split, and I've seen some people say,
but what are you just doing there? You're doing
Yeah.
the same thing, and they call a demery a vertical split
right,
instead of a horizontal split, meaning making two hives off to the side. So if you pull 5 frames of brood of all stages out and put 5 frames of empty back in with the original queen still in there, you did the same thing. Instead of putting it up on top, you put it over here in another box.
Yep.
But see what I'm getting at is it's the act of giving her space to lay eggs, not another box.
yeah, I don't have any spare drawing combs, so I'm kind of shooting at the gun here, where it's like I take some frames out because, like, at my situation earlier, you weren't here when I said it. I got two hives that are bad, and I'm going to split them all up. Split them up into a bunch of splits, but I was going to take a frame or two out of each of the other main hives and then put them in with the splits and then give it about a week or two and then do the demery method, try to at least, with the production hives.
Put the foundation in the bottom, let them draw it out.
Right.
So
that's what you were saying.
That's where my nukes come in too, is that take, and you got a deep, let's say you're doing deeps, I presume. You're going to have a deep 5-frame nuke, and she gets all that laid out. And then you put another deep with 5 frames of foundation in, maybe pull a brood frame up in there. And you might feed them a little bit of 1-to-1. They might take it, or maybe the flow's still on. They will start drawing that wax out. She'll put eggs in it before they got the darn walls, draw it up halfway. And that she's making brood comb for you. Those nukes are making the brood comb for you for the other hives that you need them in.
Yes, that's what I was going to take those ones, and once they started getting once I got the queens mated and they started rolling, I was going to take some frames out and kind of rotate frames into the main production hives a little bit to just give them more bee power.
Throw an empty foundation in there that you got it waxed up nice, and they'll draw that out for you.
Yeah.
JW had a good response there, Bill.
Huh?
JW had a good response there. So,
I saw that. But
and
they were the bees aren't like JW says. I mean, and I agree with JW. The bees aren't the stressor. It's the money that we as beekeepers keep chasing. And if you're in it for the money, you'll never get rich. I'll say that. I've been doing this too long and learned early on I'm never going to get rich with bees. Unless you're a commercial beekeeper and you've got a connection somewhere to do a lot of pollination throughout the United States, then you might make some money. All right. But you brought out a key point there, Dave. You don't have any extra drawn comb.
Mhm.
You need to pay the honey tariff for one complete season and get some drawn comb. So you have a stockpile of drawn comb.
Yep.
Then you can start doing the rolling demarays. You can start doing the brood box management you want to do and not have to worry about them swarming or giving up and leaving because there's no drawn comb in there.
Yep.
So I
You
got
know,
a question about that dim array when y'all get through.
you're gonna have to pay that tariff. And it takes 7 pounds of honey or 7 pounds of nectar to draw out 1 pound of comb. So you might as well, say, okay, I'm going to have to bite the bullet this year and do it. I've got to bite the bullet this year and get some drawn comb, some more, because
last year
I'm rotating frames.
I fed my bees after the dirt, or once the dearth hit. From then until late fall, like they got 1-to-1. They got 1-to-1, and then I switched them to like 0.7-to-1.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it was getting too cold where I couldn't feed them anymore, just to get them to draw comb out, and all that drawing comb was just because like I went from 4 hives to 10, then back down to 9, and I was trying to get them to draw out as much comb as possible, and it's like I didn't have any room to kind of move stuff over. All the one hive that did die off, I took all that drawn comb and just spread it out between all the other hives.
Yeah, that's what you do.
Then I was still at empty. I had all just foundation sitting at the shed, and I was like, all right, well, I fed them as long as I could, and they drew out what they could.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good practice if you run deeps and mediums to have as many deeps full of drawn comb as you have mediums full of drawn comb. Because you never know when you're going to need it.
Yep.
But that's where your nukes and stuff, they can draw. You use them as, like you say, resources, not only brood and bees, but comb and all.
Yeah, I'm hoping to use those as resources, but I'm hoping to get 1 or 2 rounds of nukes out of them, but they're definitely to help draw foundation and stuff out and get new comb started.
So Ms. Behaven has a question. I'll get to your question in a minute, Joey. How many frames can the bees draw out that it equals a pound of wax? Depends on whether it's a deep or medium frame. So if you're looking for deeps, you could probably figure a pound of wax is going to do 5 to 7, maybe 8 frames.
As far as waxing them, you mean?
No, drawing it out.
I don't know. Just like you say, make sure you got. I always buy triple wax frames, and they draw them out quite well. And I don't know. You just like you say, every year you're getting the bees. All right, honey super. Well, if you're going to put 10 frames in there, and they're going to draw them out, hopefully for you.
You hope.
Bill, when you said earlier that you scrape off the when you rotate out your brood comb, you scrape it off. You don't have any problems with them like drawing that out as mainly drone comb?
Nope.
Oh. That was my fear. I thought about doing that, but I was
put some drone comb in your hives, and you alleviate all this crap.
Yeah, I got 21st bees. They're frames, but I got them as the drone cell size. And yesterday I went and dropped 1 in each of the boxes or each of the hives.
I got them out there last year, and of course they had in the wintertime they fill them up with honey, and then in the summertime, right now I got them all laid up, and they are completely capped off. Yeah, you got to spend the money to make money.
Well, I bought double wax that I didn't use last year, and I waxed them myself, so it's effectively triple wax this year.
And with the drone comb, you got to wax them up. I don't care what you get on them things; they don't put enough wax on them green phones.
No, these ones are from 21st P. They seem pretty.
Oh yeah, but I'm talking about
Yeah. Now I'll say this: Michael does wax his frames. If he says it's double, it's probably a triple wax on it.
Yeah, they were pretty thick when I looked at them.
they're tacky when you get his.
Yeah, they are, and I like his frames. I really do.
When I seen them, I just wish I kind of like had the money to splurge into just buying those for like honeycomb and all that kind of stuff. But those frames are really nice. They feel good in comparison to like a wooden frame.
Yeah, that is the stressor, trying to do videos all the time.
He releases his stress on them.
Yeah.
If anything, that makes more stress being a YouTuber because you got to make sure the video's right when you go to release it. And I would say that's probably my biggest stressor is not making a crappy video, and yet all my videos are crappy.
One thing I will have to say with Ian seems to have, because I know he went to what he called MC school or whatever, or speech school to learn how to talk in public speaking. That's it. But I mean, when he does talk on his videos, everything seems to flow just quite right out, as far as what information he's trying to get out.
He's got a good editor. So Russell's got a good question too. How much wax would you get if you melt it down a deep drawn cone? So I would say you're probably about right with 2 to 3 ounces. Now, if you got wax foundation in it, you'll get a little bit more. You might get a 1/4 pound. Because that wax foundation will melt with it. But I don't use a wax foundation. I use plastic. And so 2 to 3 ounces is about right.
You're talking about education. I belong to that club that I'm going to go to their meeting this Saturday. And there's one guy's been at it for 50 years. And he said they had a video of their club meeting last Saturday, I guess it was. And he's sitting there showing these people, the newbies, I guess, wooden frame and wiring it and going to put wax in there and then heat the wires to melt the wax in the frame. And I'm like, who does that anymore? I mean, I don't know.
Yep.
And that was another thing. They were showing the one gal, she's only been a beekeeper probably 3 or 4 years. And she's, like most clubs, they're asking anybody that will, sit on the board. And she's up there showing what she did about feeding. And she had I call it a shim that had a screen bottom to it, but 1/8-inch hardware cloth. And I'm like, what are you doing? She put sugar brick on top of it. I don't think it was really fondant. And, you could see where the bees could barely scratch into that sugar fondant. And, she admitted to that. Somebody else said, you ought to have 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch screen in there. You should have at least 1/2 inch. Well, she's a lazy beekeeper. She says, she doesn't want the bees to come up into her face. I guess she doesn't want to have to take and put a jacket on or a veil on. And I'm like, there you are. You got the blind leading the blind. She don't know, she kind of knows what she made her mistakes at, but she's not showing the newer beekeepers a more proper way of doing it, it's like the bees can't even get to the candy lady because of your improper screening. Personally, why even putting the screen on anyway? I've been down that road. I've wound out. You just put the 1.5 inch shim on the hive, put the fondant or whatever on top of the bees and close it back up.
Yep. That's all you got to do.
And then one thing I've learned this year, and when it comes to fondant, the club, my club and that other club that up there, they all won't go up here I call it baker's fondant now, the 50-pound block. Baker's fondant and bee fondant is 2 different things. You either get the Hive Alive or you get strong microbials. They got products within the fondant that are beneficial to the bees, and the stuff is chewable or eatable. It's not hard.
Yeah.
Matt's magic fondant was the same way, nice and soft, and they could eat it without tearing their tongues up and their jaws and everything else.
Got a higher moisture content, whereas like Baker's fondant has a tendency to dry out very fast.
Yeah. But Hive Alive is gooey. Matt's is really gooey and nice, and they love it. And it's got fondant in it. It's got Hive Alive in it. It's got Apis Biologics in it. It's got all these positive things for the bees to eat to boost your hive up through the wintertime. Whereas the Baker's fondant doesn't have any of that. And it's, yeah, you might get cheaper, but did you really get cheaper? You didn't do it your bees any favors. And look at Matt's, Matt was feeding his, of course, he's making the fondant and he's feeding from November. His hives are just booming. But I'd say that's because of all the other ingredients in that product.
Yeah, DC said that too. Baker's fondant can also have a lot of extra stuff in it, whereas bee fondant doesn't.
He came on, pulled a potload of cattle out of the ditch with 3 field tractors. Man, he must have been stuck like something else. Trailer did not go over, but trucker could have used advice on stress, really. What was that? One of them possum bellies? Probably one of the double deckers. Probably.
Yeah.
One of them possum bellies.
I got another question. I've been kind of thinking about this too. Say you're gonna pull 4 or 5 frames out to do some splits to just kind of curb swarming. Instead of making however many hives you have, that many splits, would there be a benefit to say you had 10 hives, you split up, you took 4 or 5 frames out of each one? Would there be a benefit to making just 4 or 5 really strong split colonies? Like you take 5 frames out of each one and then put it all into 5 frames.
5 frames out of each one, you're going to have 10 splits.
Yeah.
Right.
So, or you take you take 2 frames out of each one, you get 5 splits.
What I'm saying is, you got 10 colonies. You take 5 out of each. Instead of making 5 5-frame nukes out of each of those, how about 5 10 frames, or however the math works out there?
Yeah,
Make like a super.
If you're gonna do that, you just take the darn deep box off and set it over here.
Oh yeah, true. I guess
it's the same thing.
But you also have to remember that when you put those 5 frames of bees in a 10-frame box, it's going to take them longer to build out that 10-frame box than it is if you put them in a 5-frame and put an empty 5-frame on top of it.
Right. What if you? Well, yeah.
Yeah, if you don't have any comb.
See, what I was getting at was
you could put blank comb up there, and they will still fill that out faster because they're building up and not out.
So what I was thinking is, instead of completely nuking half of the population of your main colonies, you're only taking 5 out, but you're taking those 50 frames that you took out from those 10 colonies and you're condensing them down into 5 hives as opposed to 10 splits or 10 5-frame nukes. So that way you got to have 5 super, like really strong splits, and your main colonies were only knocked back about 4 or 5 frames. If you understand what I'm saying, if I'm explaining it good.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but you're just making another complete hive.
Right.
Yeah, that's all you're doing. But if you're doing 5 and 5 over it,
right,
that's going to be a complete hive in less time than if you put 5 frames in a 10-frame box.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to make that complete colony 5 over 5 faster than you will 10, like this.
Right. So that
you're putting in 10 frames of drawn comb is what you're saying, Dave.
Yeah.
You're not gaining anything there.
No.
If you're in a situation now where you're trying to make more comb,
Well,
more
this was
frames,
just in the game of just splitting to like curve like swarming or something. It's just to take some frames out to slow them down a little bit before the flow hits, and then make those other really strong splits, and maybe they could get ready and produce honey for the year when the flow hits. That's how I was thinking it would work.
they're not going to produce honey for you. Not your split.
That would hurt them too much. Even
No,
if they were,
you go over there and put 5 frames in a 5-frame nuke box, and put the foundation on top. Or if you got 10 frames of bees and brood and whatever, you're going to have to put another box up on top because they're going to run out of room darn quick.
well, you put 10 frames from 2 hives into a double deep.
Yeah, but what kind of frames you pulling out? Are we talking all brood frames? So now you're saying you're putting 10 brood frames, or at least 8 frames, and maybe 2 frames. At least 8 frames, and you got a frame of honey, and let's say a frame of pollen over on the other side. So now you got an established strong hive, maybe not with a queen yet, but there you are. You know, there ain't going to be too many weeks, and they're going to be ready to swarm.
Right. Yes,
And,
I was thinking.
as long as you got that queen in there quick enough.
Yeah.
Or within 4 to 6 days, they're going to have a queen cell in there to start with anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
If I understand the question you're asking, you can do it any way you want to.
Yeah.
You can make a nuke out of each hive that you already have, or you can make one bigger hive out of what you pull out of 2 hives.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it like you want to. But what they're saying about taking 5 frames or like three broods and a couple of foods. What Bill was talking about there, you put that in a nuke and they'll grow faster, and then stack a second nuke box on it and they'll build up there quicker, and then go to 2 double deeps.
Right.
And they'll go out further.
Yeah, you'll end up with 10 frames of bees.
It's what one of the guys we go all the time, he calls it the chimney effect. They'll build this way first and then they'll go out.
Right.
Yeah.
Double deep.
Now, back here a couple of years ago, what I did is I took 3 frames of bees, 2 frames of food, and set an empty 5-frame box or empty 5-frame deep right up on top of them. The day I made the split, I put the empty on top.
Mm-hmm.
A week and a half later, I had 10 frames of bees.
And that was with putting a new queen, or were you taking an existing queen?
Existing queen.
Okay.
Because they're more confined, they have less space that they have to worry about, and they'll go up faster.
So that she's already laying as soon as she goes over there. I was like, what?
Yeah.
If you take those frames out and you plop a queen cell in there, would you still do the 5?
30 days.
You would wait before you put another box on them?
No, 30 days for that queen to get back to hatch, harden up, get mated, come back, get situated, and start being productive productive egg layer. You're looking at least 30 days.
And if you did that, you would still put the 5-frame on top, regardless if she was ready. You wouldn't. You would just leave it a 5-frame nuke.
Yep. So it's 30 days before you're going to put that next box on there.
Right.
If you're doing a split and you take the old queen and put in that nuke box, which is what you should do, the way you do your splits, and then you can immediately set that other 5 frames on top of it and build that out in a week and a half during a good flow. Then you can either let them make a queen, put a queen cell in, or introduce a queen into the donor hive, which personally, we introduce a queen into the donor hive so we don't lose any time.
Right.
With those bees being productive.
Yeah.
That's just the way we do it. I mean, everybody has their own way of doing things, and I understand that, but that's just how we do it so we don't lose any production time. So, Joey, you had a question about Demarest splits.
But Charlie uses mediums. So you've got a queen excluder on top of 2 mediums.
Mm-hmm.
And you say you always move an open brood comb down there. Does she really have time to fill that whole box up before her first eggs are capped and emerging?
That's the whole. See, that's another thing. That's why you have those single brood chamber. That's why the commercial guys talk about all this. You want her to be a young queen, and you want her to lay every hole in that double box down there, or that big deep up with an egg. So you just manipulated the bees to force them to put all the honey upstairs.
What
and
I'm
then,
asking, though,
and then as they cap off so many of them frames, you get one that's about 95 or more percent capped off on both sides. That's when you're going to take the top off of that, pull them frames out, put in empties, put it all back together. You got a honey super above that queen excluder, and you got the deep brood box up on top. Now, the original demery, you're supposed to take all the brood and everything and put it upstairs and leave the queen down there with like 3 frames of bees and brood and food.
I guess what I'm trying to ask, though, let's just say she started on the right hand outside frame or somewhere in there. You got double mediums all the way across.
Yeah.
If she starts laying, by the time she gets to the other side of that box laying, aren't these already hatching out? Do you really need to move empty comb down there? Or
you're talking just like what Dave said about the mathematics about it.
Well,
and the thing of it is, if she's laid here, she's laid everything else over here.
The reason I say that, in my long hives, my entrance is in the end, and they sometimes that first frame will be food frame, and then the second all the way to 11 will be brood. They never hardly ever go past that frame 11, hardly ever, and they go back and start over again. Everything from sometimes 12 might have a brood on it, on one side of it, but most of the time it's 11 will be brood on one side, honey on the other, and it's honey all the way out. They never go past that. They always go back and relay in those 10 frames.
A horizontal job.
And that's deep. That's deep frames. So my thinking is, even where you're using deep with an excluder on top or 2 mediums with an excluder on top, time she got to one side, she could go back and start laying again on the other side. That's just my thinking. They've emerged by then. Time she's filled that whole 2 mediums up, wouldn't she?
Yeah, but you're talking about a long hive, right?
I'm just using the long hive.
About a Langstroth hive, Charlie. A demeray.
What, Bill?
He's talking about a demeray.
I know that, but what he's talking about is in a long hive.
10 frames in a long hive is the same as 10 frames in a demeray. And
you're right.
She just keeps starting over.
You're not going north.
That doesn't matter. You still got 10 frames she's laying in. What I'm asking is, why do you really
do it this way? You got a ball brood, a circle of brood here like this. Mm-hmm. This is the way it is in there. It isn't going this way or that way. They're going this way.
Joey, I think that'll answer your question right there.
So you're making nurse bees move. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, you're moving the nurse bees up to the top.
Well, how come they're not moving, or how do they move in my long hive? I mean, it's still 10 frames. So these 10 frames getting laid over and over and over. That's what confuses me.
It is.
I don't know. I've tried that where I didn't move anything in the bottom, and here comes the queen cells and all. And then if you get a 2-year-old queen where she's not laying corner to corner, she won't keep that double medium or that deep full of eggs, and they'll start pouring honey down in there, just like a double deep. Most new
Yeah.
beekeepers will run out a double deep with queen excluder and honey supers on top. And I tell them, I says, let me tell you how the pattern's going to be. I said they'll start down at the bottom, and I said she'll work up on 6 frames dead center of the hive, and everything else out here will be honey and whatever pollen. Then as soon as this brood patch up here empties out, hatches out, what are they going to do? They're going to backfill it with honey. And you can replace it, and guess what they're going to do? They're going to backfill it with honey because you've got a chamber that's too big. A single box is just the right size. It forces them to put the honey upstairs because she's got everything else laid up in eggs down here and cat brood and everything else along with it.
I understand what you're asking, Joey. Is it has to do with the timing of laying the egg and then growing into the larva and getting capped by the time she gets over here. If it's just capped and you pull it out and put a fresh frame in here on the opposite side of where she's at, she's going back to an empty frame to lay. And you work your way across like that, all the way across to where she finished laying the first round through. And then by the time she gets there, it's a fresh frame. All the capped brood is moved to the top.
And all right, where do you move once they're capped? Where do you move them to in the location of the?
You move them to the very top box.
And next week you'll come move those that's open back down.
Back down. That's why you got to have 95 to 100% capped frame for the demarray to work.
Well, you want to
when you move it up, those bees up there are queenless. There's no queen scent. They're queenless. If there's an open egg up there, they're going to make a queen.
Yeah.
Now, in a true demarray, the original demarray, you basically pulled the queen out with a couple frames, put that in another box over here off the side, take that bottom brood box away, put her back in with this new box. Now, they talked about they wanted you to put in draw and comb, the original writings of George Demarray, or you could put in foundation. But got to remember something. It's like I tell people, when you read something that was written in 1892, you got to think like a beekeeper in 1892. So he's putting in real drawn wax frames, not plastic.
Yeah.
And number 2, the environment was back then where they could get 100 to 150 pounds of honey, and that they had enough honey flow coming in, they could draw all those frames out with wax.
Right.
And you didn't have to do all that switching around for over a month or more.
So you can do this to keep them from swarming.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you do you don't worry about making splits to keep them from swarming. You just go ahead and start doing that.
I am making a split. I'm making a vertical.
It's a vertical split.
A vertical split within the same hive. That was the
So,
principle of George Demarray. He wrote in there.
When you get right down to it, a demarray split or a demarray is a very specific type of split. I'm seeing the comments in here. Yes, there's a lot of different ways to do splits. There's a lot of different ways to raise bees. But if you're going to do a demarray, it's a very specific way to do it. And it's a vertical split, not a horizontal split. I believe you could do the same thing in a horizontal hive, Joey. Never done it. I don't have horizontal hives yet. So as I get older and my back plays out, yeah, I'll get some. But it's a very specific vertical split, and you have to work it as single brood box management for it to work out correctly.
And the thing of it was, he wrote in his original paper is you got to remember another thing. In his day, combed honey was the way you sold honey. They didn't have spinners yet that I know of. And he wanted a super strong hive. He did not want to split the hive and make another hive. He wanted his a super strong, powerful hive to make that comb honey. And they had the flow coming in because of the era, because you had mostly all farms and no sprays whatsoever. None of that was invented. So you had all this honey coming in. He wanted a super strong beehive to make combed honey so he could sell, sell honey that way. And that's how he did it. He said, I didn't want to make a horizontal split, meaning I don't want to make another hive. I want to use the same bee population and all that.
Yeah.
Then you could also
then-
just leave the box on top, like the one that you put on top. You can leave them there; they'll all hatch out, and then all the foragers will backfill that whole box if you wanted an extra deep of, or however big you wanted it, of honey. They would backfill that whole box. And you
What
can
I do is
put it back down.
I'll put 4 or 5 frames of brood up there, and for a while there I had open comb. Take that open comb out of there.
Yeah.
I put foundation up there because they'll start to build wax up there.
Yeah. That's another way to get drawn wax.
So I can make a nuke. I'm already, the idea of shaking the bees off the brood into the hive and put a queen excluder on and put that brood in a box above the queen excluder in order to make a split without looking at the queen. Doolittle come up with that idea 100 years ago. And same thing with this demery. The demery makes you more honey, makes you more bees. You can put you're kind of doing a split up on top. If you want to make a split where you want to make a nuke over here and you want them to make their own queens, you can have all that done by that one hive upstairs. You can just put a frame of eggs up there and they'll start making queen cells. Or if you need to go and make a bunch of mating boxes like I'm going to do, I'm going to go down that hive there and I can pull 18 frames out, or I can pull 2 frames out of each hive and put them in my 2-frame mating boxes and do it that way, and I know where the queen's at. They're all on the bottom. They're not upstairs and that kind of thing. So it has a lot of, it creates a lot of different,
how often, once your flow really gets to going and she's laying good, how often do you go through and do that?
Every week. If she's a really good queen and she's laying up a storm, that's why I'm going back to that demery will burn her out in a year, big time. And if I want her to lay up every hole there is in cell in the bottom box, you need to go in there about every 7 days, at least 7 or 8 days. And all that's why that's why we got our hive lifters, Joey.
Yeah. So you got me thinking. I'm wondering if I want to try a couple of them.
Yeah, try it.
Using all deeps. Now, do I need one excluder or do I need 2?
One.
Just one?
I don't know why they want to put a excluder up top. I mean, if you got a virgin queen, she's going to go right through that queen excluder.
Yeah.
I would say have a top entrance from what the videos that I was watching.
Set your bee boxes back. Don't have an entrance. Just pull it back enough so the drone can go out the top.
Yeah. In case you get some drones up there, they can't go down through the queen excluder. They need to have a way to get out.
Yeah.
As long as the flow's running, you're fine.
Yep.
And
as long as you don't have, if you don't see a lot of predator bees around, like yellow jackets, wasps, things like that, you can do that. But if you do, you need to put an entrance up there that they can guard.
Put yourself a emery shim up there or something.
Yeah.
I've seen some people say you could run a 2-queen colony that way using a demery. You take that initial box up there, let them raise a queen cell. The queen's going to hatch out. If you have an entrance up there, she'll exit out of that entrance, maybe, if she doesn't make it through the queen excluder. And then she'll go get mated, come back, and then you got a 2-queen system running. You could either
Hey,
leave her
a
there or
second
pull
hive
her out.
up, she's not gonna put any honey up there.
Yeah.
To me, now you're really complicating things.
They'd have to put it below her.
Yeah. This is another way to get another queen. I mean, once you see her
That
ready,
idea is
pull her out.
like Brian says there, it's similar to a double screen board type idea.
That can probably be done in a long hive too, but you'd have to have an excluder. See, the honey usually keeps them going past any further down. But if you fix the excluder in there and just move that brood to the other side and move empties back,
How many frames do you have in a long hive, or can you fit
30.
in 30? So if you got 10, if you're saying she doesn't go past 12, she'll stop at 11, and then you have like another 10 there. You could essentially just take that first 10 or 11, throw them on the other side, and then give her 10 more like fresh foundations or comb, and that where you just took them. And yeah, you would need a queen excluder, but the ones on that side would eventually hatch out and then merge back over with the main side. I mean, you could do it. I didn't know it was 30. I thought it was somewhere around 20, but
that's what mine are, 30.
I guess you can make long hives of different sizes.
Yeah, the laying time I've got, Joey, is 25 frames.
The main thing about this whole demery thing is you gotta have a really good queen. You know, if you got a really hot queen and she's laying is high potentials, laying everything up within a week, that's when you got to go in there every week. If she's like last spring, I had that second year queens in there, and I didn't have to demery hardly at all because I didn't have no darn. She wasn't going to swarm because she wasn't laying fast enough. You know, they were filling the brood chamber up more so than anything else.
Yeah.
I noticed I've seen a lot of beekeepers, they say this, that all the queens that I have now are all after the flow queens from last year. And
you got June queens or July queens, right?
I think they were end of June when I did my graphic.
All right, so you got fresh queens that haven't went through the build up, as we call it.
Yeah,
the build up is going now on up and getting through the honey. You're laying up a storm to get through the honey season, and then after the 21st of June, daylight starts to shorten up, and then she starts to slow up.
Yeah,
that's when you need to get rid of her. Well, actually, you need to get rid of her about the middle of June, I think.
Charlie, answer that question.
How long do you continue the manipulation before you change over to honey supers? You're doing this manipulation while you have the honey supers on. So come April, and when I see the dandelions, then I'll go into the hives behind me there. Like this one here, it's got two purple and a green one on the bottom. I'll have a green and a purple on the bottom. Take that one on the top off. And probably what I'll do is I'll go through them all three of them boxes. I'll go through them and I will gather all the cat brood that I can find. And if there's open brood and I'll see a top box, I'll put all that down in the bottom and I'll fill out those two bottom mediums. Queen excluder goes on, a honey super goes on, and then I take that top purple box that's got all this cat brood in there and put that on top of the honey box. So now the top box acts like a magnet and brings all them nurse bees up through the honey super and all that. If I got a hot queen in the bottom, she's going to lay everything up with eggs. All right. You just manipulated the bees to make them and force them to put all the honey up in that honey super because they got no place to put it down there in that brood chamber. That's why all these commercial guys talk about single brood chamber management. It's the fact that their hot queens force the rest of the bees to put everything upstairs.
Yep.
And, and you go in when you first get into beekeeping, they'll say, well, you got 10 frames. You got to bring the outside frames in the honey super and put them to the middle so the bees will fulfill them. Well, I'm up to the point where I got drawn comb and I got 9 frames in there. I don't have to worry about it. If I got a great hive, they will fill all 9 frames up without me ever having to move them frames.
Yep.
Now, one thing I've noticed, and I'm going to try to film this summer to let people see this. If I get in there and I get into that hive down on that honey super, when I take the top box off just to look at the honey super, to check the honey super, if I see a pattern of a cluster of bees pretty much covering all 9 frames, and I'm not talking about down in the frames, I want to see no frames because all I see is bees. They'll fill that box up 100%. If I take them same pattern and you shrink that down to about 6 or 7 frames, you'll get about a half a box of honey because you don't have enough bees in there to fill that box up.
Well, you know, I might have told you this, Charlie. Last year, I accidentally did a single brood chamber hive. I had it excluded on there for a reason.
Yeah.
And I put a second deep on top of it and totally forgot I had that excluded on there and worked it all season, pulled honey off of it and everything, left that second chamber there like I do all my others. I didn't realize that queen excluder was still on there that whole season until next year when I got ready to do splits. And I found them.
So what are you saying? That there's honey on the top deep box? And
Yeah, it was full of honey. That box was full of honey, and the queen was still down there working in that bottom chamber.
And she didn't swarm on you either.
Well, I'd already done the splits for that year.
All right, so you did the splits. See, I mean, I've never. I have the experience when you're pulling. You know, people talk about making a split and putting drone comb in there, and I'm like, okay, well, that works for about so many weeks, and after that, it's all full again, and she's going to want to swarm again.
Yeah. So Pete brings out a good point here. If you leave your honey supers on there after they're full, yeah, 5 honey supers makes a really tall box.
Yeah.
But you can pull the full honey supers off and put empties up there in their place. Once they're filled out, pull them off. That way you don't have to fight with them every week.
Pull them, spin them.
Yeah. If you keep 2 on there.
If you get them to where they're capped.
Yeah. If you can get them to cap them, pull the capped ones off and keep 2 empties on there, it's a whole lot easier to deal with 2 than it is 5 or 6. Right?
That's what we do down here. I'll even pull 4 or 5 out of each box. If they're capped, they're just wasting space. I pull them out, bring them in, spin them out, and take them back.
Yeah.
There was a
and then misbehaving talks about extracting them and putting them back in wet. Yeah, I mean, I've heard that if you put them back in wet, they'll fill them right back up because they
will. They'll everything that's coming out, all the wet, they'll start packing it back in there, and then they'll keep on packing.
Yeah, there was a beekeeper that he's a older guy down in Southern Virginia below Richmond. He was telling me that he won't take a whole frame. He'll go out there. He said he's got 15 hives, so it's kind of easier to do it with him. He'll go out there and he'll look at all the honey supers, and he'll only pull the frames out that are completely capped and put those in a separate box. And then he'll go and he'll refill them with empty comb. Then he'll go and draw those out and then just take them back out and just keep cycling the ones that are capped out.
You see what Eric said there, Bill? No, on up there where he says no offense to Joey.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I always tell people I can't remember anything long enough to forget it.
And Brian out there, Flasher, he does the same thing. He puts wet supers back in.
Yeah.
I do it all the time. I usually try to go to the same hive, but I don't know if it's necessary.
I have to say this. I mean, when it comes to demery and all these different methods, and like with Joey, I mean, what do you average per hive down there, honey wise?
Gallon wise, maybe 5 gallons per hive. That's on what I call my production hives.
That's 60 pounds a hive.
60 pounds a
hive. That's a good average. Now I've got some that's later coming up that they may not give but 3 to 4 gallons. And I got some that might give 6, but that's pushing it out here.
All right. So you don't have a huge flow then.
No, it comes so fast when it does start. But we just have trickles until the privet, when it comes in, if it comes in good, we'll get a little surge there, and then it kind of lays back down. And once it's mellowed out, when tallow comes in, it hits like a tidal wave for about 3 weeks, and that's it again.
He got, what is it, tritone there? I think that's how it's pronounced. He talks about Ian. Total different world. Different world up there.
It's a totally different type of flow and everything else up there than it is here.
There, their average is 250 pounds per hive, if not 300.
Yeah,
we don't have nothing. We, like you say, 50, 60 pounds per hive. They've got 24,000 acres of canola. As far as you can see to the horizon is yellow. And those bees have got a complete world of their own up there to suck all that in and everything. And Ian's doing the same thing. If you notice, he's going in and and another thing, canola, you look at Ian and what he's doing up there. He's checking the moisture content. It's getting close to being dry. And if it's about 2/3 cap, that's good enough. Why? Because it's canola. That canola will harden and in the comb, and you can't even get it out.
Yeah.
He's got to work that stuff real quick. Like he had that one, I think it was him. He had that auger in the bottom of that machine up there, the uncapping machine. That overnight, that canola will crystallize, and he had a hard time, keeping it, getting that auger to spin again. So it depends on where you're located at. It depends on your forage. If you got a tremendous amount of forage coming in, nectar, then drawing wax is easier. Everything is a lot easier and everything, and you don't have to manipulate quite as much. And you'll probably be putting 2 and 3 boxes on at a clip and all. And it's the way, ours is drips and drabs. I mean, we got a nectar source mainly May, 4 weeks of really good nectar. You got a slight flow coming in up to May. You got the peak of the flow through the month of May. And by June, you're starting going down the other hill. And by the end of June, the 1st of July, you're done.
All right. One more question before we
rains in between there, you ain't got nothing.
One more question before we get out of here.
Yeah.
Bill, you do your demeray a little different, don't you? From Charlie?
I do what they call, when I do a demeray, which I'm going to try the way Charlie does it this year. I was doing what they call a traditional demeray, to where you had a double brood box and you did not rotate frames out to the top. And it's a lot of work. It's more work than the way Charlie does it. Put it that way.
Didn't you take everything out of the bottom box, put it up on top, and put an empty box with comb and her, and maybe 2 frames of eggs and food, and then she had all that 8 or let's say 8 frames to lay in, and then she acted like everybody talks about, like it swarmed. And I'm looking at that. I'm thinking to myself, well, if she's laying all these eggs, she needs the bee power to cover all them eggs. So where's the bees coming from,
Right. So, and the other problem with the traditional demeray is once she's laid everything out, she's done until everything emerges. There's nothing else for her to do. So she's not doing anything, and then that's where the problems start, once she gets both those brood boxes laid out.
So my thinking, I was getting with the math of like with the traditional one. If you do one, maybe 2 rounds of a demery split in our area, those bees should be dying off somewhere where the flow starts tapering out. So you wouldn't have that big of a force there to say, you know how like when the dearth hits, they go backwards a little bit. If you just keep demerying, you're keeping their population gigantic, and that's going to be that much of a siphon on what stores they do have.
No, that's not correct. When you pull your honey for the year, like here, we pull honey July 4th.
Right.
That demeray gets torn down and gets split down to its winter configuration to go through the dearth. I might get 4 or 5 splits at one time.
You
off
split
of
them up
demeray.
after. You split them up after.
Oh yeah, you got to do some of those bees.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was thinking. I was like, well, then you could, instead of having to split, you could just let them kind of die off, and they would naturally degrade down instead of doing the splits.
Yeah, but no, then you end up with a 4-stack hive with not enough bees in it to actually make that hive viable for winter to overwinter.
And I did see your comment earlier where you said that you just keep bringing the brood down after they hatch out. What I've seen with the demery is you just leave that brood box up there and then they just backfill that all with honey.
That's the original demery method.
Right.
Yeah. That's the original, the traditional. But Tritone, he's saying you don't need to manipulate the brood box, but you do. You have to manipulate the brood box in a rolling demeray to make sure that all that brood goes up to the top to hatch out, because you want empty frames down there for her to lay in. What you're talking about, the math doesn't add up when you start doing it that way.
Well, I did it.
Tritone
did it that way, where I didn't move anybody up, and I put this 2 mediums on there, queen excluder, and a couple medium honey supers. And I went in, I would go down in the bottom and check, and sure enough, after a month or less, for so many weeks, they're down there making swarm cells. I said, well, this ain't working. Yeah. I don't know how Ian and all them guys get it to how they do all that. Of course, Ian and all them guys are on this super compressed flow. What they do in just so many months, but they also have, 12, 14 hours of daylight too up there.
Yeah, but their flow time is half what ours is.
Yeah.
And if they do the traditional demeray, they don't have the time to move that brood, and the traditional demeray up there will work for them. Whereas here, it will not work in the lower 48, especially where I'm at, because of the length of the flow.
That was just like I was listening to the guy over in England, and he's talking about the demery. He actually did the thing about it at the Nobby. And he stated there that he would, he was doing the traditional. He was taking the bottom box, putting it up on the top, and put the queen in there by herself, along with a little bit of brood. Well, then he would say, well, it might last a month. And he said, after that, you're going to have to do that again, because if the flow keeps going, because she's going to run out of room.
I think I'm too lazy to do all that.
I don't know.
I just put my excluder on top of the second box.
Joey, is it lazy or are you getting old?
Little of both, probably.
Yeah, it's just how I was thinking with the traditional demery. It's if you do it once maybe twice, you're getting that. If you do deep brood chambers, you would get like 1, maybe 2 mediums of honey, and if they backfill that deep, then you're getting what, 90 pounds.
So what are you going to do? Put your honey in your brood frames?
Why not?
when they're
Where's queen gonna lay?
brood frames, they are nasty to cut.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was how I watched the videos where they just let the bees backfill everything.
Best thing I can tell you, Dave, is do what you're talking about and do one of mine with
And
as
compare
long as
the
you got,
two.
long as you got good queens, and then see what you think of it.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
thing. All my queen, when we were talking earlier, where all my queens are after they're late season queens.
Yeah, they're last year. They're
They-
June queens of last year. They're going to be hot and heavy this spring.
They're right now. I have barely any cells for them to lay in. They have laid. They're been double deeps. Everything that's open is either has eggs in it, or they got pollen or bee bread in it, and it was wall to wall every frame.
Yeah, that's what you want.
So
They're
I
not
got
going to swarm right now because they ain't got the drones yet. They're not going to do anything until they have the drones ready to go to mate with that queen.
what is drones ready to go? Because every one of my hides had walking drones.
And how many of them? A whole pile of them? Or
No, it was probably about 20 or 30. It
well,
wasn't
get
a lot.
about 50 or 60 of them in there. And look out, here they come. Here comes the swarm cells.
Yeah, so I guess then I got about a week or two. Because they're walking drones. It wasn't no like purple eye pupae. They're walking drones. I saw them in every hive.
Yeah, well, purple eye means they're not going to be ready for what, 2 weeks, Bill? Something like that.
Yeah.
Something I forget what you use that for, but I'd say walking drones is what you want to look for.
Yeah. So I'm in Southern Maryland. So if y'all are questioning where I'm at, I got walking drones in Southern Maryland.
He's down next to Potomac, close to Richmond.
Yeah. St. Mary's County.
But the drone, when like right now, I got drone comb. I got 2 medium frames of drone comb. They are solid, laid up, capped over. Ain't none of them hatched yet. So they're getting ready to get hatched. And that's another thing. You put the drone comb in there, you don't have all that trash in between the frames like you do.
Oh yeah, I pulled out half a bucket of bird comb from those 9
Yeah,
hives.
when you put them drone combs in there, you alleviate all that because you give that hive a place to put. I don't want drone in my normal comb.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give them a place to put the drone to relieve that urge. It really does a good job, and that's listen to what's her name up there in Penn State? I can't think of her name now. But anyway, JW.
Good evening. I just can't stand it any longer.
You getting stressful?
You got me so stressed out. I'm going to suggest that's all good, fellas, with maybe like 20 hives or less. But when you go try and demerate and 20 or 50 or 75 or 100 or more,
Yeah,
you're gonna have yourself a double.
You can't do that.
double
That's way too much work.
Yeah, but you're gonna have to learn how to do it in a different way.
Yeah.
Or like most of your commercial guys, I don't think they worry about swarms.
No.
Robin Underwood, yep, that's who it was.
I think Bob Benny, he curbs his by making a vertical split, but he puts his on top of the brood box, and then he'll just pull those 5 out when he's ready to do make a nuke out of it.
Yeah.
That's what he uses, strictly double screen boards, pretty much. So, Dave, they don't demerate down there, to my knowledge, at all.
Yeah, they shake all the bees. What I've seen, they shake all the bees out. They put 4 or 5 good frames of brood on the top, let the nurse bees come back up, and then they make a nuke out of that in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's how he makes these nukes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So it's after 10 o'clock. It's a school night. So I know other people need to go to work tomorrow. So I'm going to end the chat. And Tom, you know what to do if you want to talk. So everybody have a good night. And we'll see you tomorrow night is Tom. And then Wednesday night is Stream Team. Thursday night is Keith's chat. And then this Thursday night late is the late night chat with the West Coast bunch. And then Friday night is Charlie at 8 o'clock. And Saturday night is Joey. And he's not a mentee anymore. He's a full-fledged beekeeper again. So y'all have a good week. And if you've enjoyed the chat tonight, hit the like button, subscribe. It keeps us all hanging out a little bit longer. And if there's anybody on here from my area in the Shenandoah Valley that wants to be an intern in our bee yard, we are looking for an intern this year. So give us a call at the store and we'll discuss it. So good night, everybody.
Good night.